Hello, this is Darryl Cummings, and we're here with the Sports Philosophy Show, brought to you by Davenport and Company, the Norfolk office, along with K&D Rounds Landscaping, Universal Pest, and Cape Henry Racket Club. I'm here with Lindsey Fisher, who's our guest host today. Jack Ankerson is on assignment.
On assignment. He's not in Florida like you, though.
No, he's doing baseball today. So he's calling a game down the road for a minor league game. And Lindsey's background is Lindsey's a former Notre Dame tennis player, and she achieved 200 wins, I believe.
That's what they
Is
say.
it 200 or 201?
I think it was 204 if you really want to go to
Okay.
it. But I don't recall.
200 plus wins in college. Scholarship player, and with that's a fancy way of saying her parents didn't have to pay. And she's also an NCAA qualifier. So, Lindsey, thanks for being on the show today, on the YouTube live show.
Fancy. This is very fancy. Thank you for having me.
Well, Lindsey, today we're going to talk a little bit about the college recruiting process.
Yes.
We're going to touch on the universal tennis rating, which has kind of grasped the college scene now. And then we're going to go through some of the consulting that you and I deal with some of the clients that and different phases that we go through as far as trying to service them and help them find in the school that's the best fit. But how about tell us a little bit about your recruiting process to Notre Dame? How did that work out? Was it did I just send a letter and say come?
I'm going to date myself. So that's the hard part of this is it makes me feel old because it's changed a lot. Universal tennis rating wasn't around when I grew up. It was straight rankings, and there were 2 national tournaments. You played clays and you played hard courts, and that was the show. So it's changed a lot. My recruiting process was me deciding with my parents what schools I like nationally, which was a list of probably 50 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I typed out a letter on my old computer and printed it with the printers that went back and forth back in the day and sent out about 50 letters to college coaches telling them who I was and that I was interested in their school. And then I went to clay courts, I guess was first before hard courts. And they had a station set up with all the coaches, and you'd go around and talk to the ones. That was kind of first contact with them. And then they'd start calling and eventually set up a recruiting trip, and it went from there. So it's a lot and nothing really happened. Nobody really signed anything until the fall of their senior year. And the first contact was July 1 going into your senior year. So everything was later. And there were precise dates. Now people are committing, a year in advance. Things have changed a lot since I was there.
It sounds like it wasn't as a rushed process or wasn't as busy with, I mean, certainly there was no texting and all that kind of stuff going on. But it sounded like it was a little bit more methodical. They got to see you play during the summer before they signed you.
Methodical, simpler would be another word.
Simpler.
It wasn't as complex a process, which I think makes it a lot harder on the girls these days because you had to do these 2 things, which were clay court to get into the top 100, at least at a Division I level. You had to play the 2 national tournaments, and that's where you saw the coaches, and everything was home phone calls to your house. If you missed them, they leave a message on your voicemail. There were no cell phones. There was no email, so it wasn't, drop a line. It's just really different.
So you go to play the clay courts and you play the hard courts and so forth. So how did you end up with Notre Dame? I mean, was that the one ahead of your list, or was it?
Yeah, my grandfather, Irish Catholic, grew up in New York State. Was always obsessed with Notre Dame, played basketball at Colgate, and just really had a love for Notre Dame. And there's 7 grandchildren on my dad's side, and he took each of us to a Notre Dame football game our freshman year in high school. And we walked around campus, and my dad got to go on that trip. So it was my grandfather, my dad, and myself, and went to a Notre Dame Michigan game in the rain. Notre Dame won in the last 30 seconds, and I kind of said, oh, well, this is it. I'm in. And fortunately, the tennis worked out all at the last minute. It's kind of was a scary nail biter up until the very last minute. I was about to commit somewhere else, and luckily Jay came through at the last minute, and I was able to get the scholarship that I wanted.
So like Notre Dame back then, they were a top 20 school, I believe, in the tennis rankings.
Yes, I don't know what exactly they were when I was a senior in high school, but while I was there, we ranged from 23 to 5, just in the 4 years, up and down.
So was it very competitive? I mean, was there a long list of girls that wanted to go to Notre Dame? Were you were you the AKA blue chip player that he was sucking up to, or did you have to fight?
Yeah, I love these terms.
Did you have to market yourself a little bit? Or?
These terms also didn't exist. Blue chip, and I know what it is now, but back in the day, no. No, I was lower down on the list. I was a good national player, but nowhere near the caliber of the girls they were able to get at Notre Dame at the time. I was kind of right on the bottom, and it happened to be a year there were 3 scholarships. He had 3 and then 1 every other year, the way it was set up, not 2, 2, 2, which most teams had. So that was a lucky year because there were 3, and there was a girl he couldn't get in academically, so I really wasn't even going to make it on the list. And at the last minute, he couldn't get a girl in academically, so I slid in.
So you weren't in quite a Rudy situation, because Rudy only got in for 1 play for the football game.
All right.
I mean, your career, you end up winning 200 matches. And 200 matches means that's you're averaging 25 singles wins, 25 doubles wins per year, something like that. So that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I wasn't Rudy, but I certainly wasn't expected to play.
Right.
So I think just having the opportunity, and I talked to a lot of the girls we work with about this, and guys too, that having the opportunity, no matter where you come from, and tennis in California, where I'm from, is a particularly good tennis state. So there's a lot of competition. I know it can be challenging in other states finding the competition you need, but even still, having the opportunity to go to a team where everybody is as good or better than you are and play with them every day, compete against them every day. 9 out of 10 times, that's going to wildly elevate the game of any player. So having that opportunity, I thrived and got better.
So your experience at Notre Dame, not only did you get in the top 6, move up, win a bunch of matches, but you also qualified for the NCAAs, which is a sign of excellence, whether it be the Division I level, 2, 3. So to qualify for the NCAA championships, that had to be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I'll probably always remember it as 1 round away from All-American. You say NCAA qualifier, I say missed All-American by 1 round. But yes, it was a big deal. Doubles was my thing. I think I was much probably better at it.
And I think to share with our viewers is to be an All-American in singles, you either need to get to the round of 16 in the NCAA tournament, be seeded in the top 16, or be ranked in the top 16 at the end of the year. And that's pretty much that's not 48 players there. That would be maybe 24 players, because if you're seeded in the top 16,
there's overlap.
So you made in doubles, everything is based on the quarters.
Right.
So they say in the NCAA tournament the hardest match to win is the All-American match,
right?
Which is your second match that you're playing.
Right.
And then after that, it's kind of gravy. Either you win the tournament or you don't.
Yeah, we lost 4 and 4, and I don't think I made a serve. So it was a tough to swallow. But
I mean, for the kids that we're working with, some of the players we're working with as far as work consulting, whether it be Division I, 2, or 3. We'll talk a little bit about the ratings in a minute, but some have an opportunity. You don't want to curse someone and say you will be an All-American, but you're projected to have the opportunity.
Right.
You're
in a position.
Yeah, that's
to make that happen for you.
Yeah. So and that's a pretty cool thing So, but NCAA qualifiers, that's a good brand.
Take it as
scholarship player at Notre Dame, good brand.
Thanks.
200 wins, and that's very good. And so it sounds like you had great experience and so forth. Now, let's share with our viewers here a little bit about the Universal Tennis Rating.
Yeah.
The Universal Tennis Rating is it's come in play into college tennis here in the last few years. A lot of colleges are using it. It's a rating system based on 1 through 16. Federer's a 16, Serena's a 13, and the little kid who's playing his first full court game, playing deuce on the ad side, standing inside the baseline, is level 1. And so that rating going from 1 to 16 is based on a competitive threshold of 6'3", 6'4". So if you're a level 10 and a bunch of your friends are level 10s, and I'm playing with you guys, and I get to 6'3", 6'4", about 50% of the time.
Let's be a realistic example for the viewers, Darryl.
I'm saying if I went back 5 years ago, 10, well, maybe more like 20 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, if I can get to a competitive threshold against level 10 players, doesn't mean I win at all. But if I'm going 6'3", 6'4", I'm about the same level. So a lot of the number 1 team in the country, like Virginia, is on the men's side. The number 6 player is a level 14. Number 1 is about a 15.
Right.
And if you want more information about that, that'll be below on the comments. We'll put that in there. In addition, if you go to our website, cummingsathletics.com, there's some PDF files in there that show the top 75 schools in Division I and the top 40 in Division III, given their range of universal tennis ratings. So what's your thoughts about universal tennis ratings of how, now in college tennis, it was kind of a hidden idea of what your level is, but now schools are much more competitive now than your days. I mean, the mid-majors are taking up NCAA spots, and the good players are going to schools that aren't in the Power Five. So what's your experience with the universal tennis rating so far?
Obviously, until I got back into the tennis world and the competitive tennis world, I didn't know anything about it. And I think it's quite interesting, and I think it's taking over in a good way. It's something you can't question. It's a mathematical formula. It's not, well, that person looked really good on that day. Everybody has good days and bad days, and the universal tennis rating kind of takes that out of play. And I think it's a good way for players to get a realistic glimpse of where they fit into a market. I could have been 12 saying I want to play tennis at Stanford, and I happen to be a realistic person enough at my age in my market to know that I couldn't play tennis at Stanford. They were number 1 when I went to college, and that was not an opportunity for me. But now you can look at the universal tennis and where you fit in and how you're climbing and what kind of improvements you're making in that level as you progress, and kind of have an idea where your possibilities are to fit in, where you're going to be the Rudy, where you're going to, maybe I could probably play 3 here in the next year or 2. And it gives you a better idea of how you're probably going to level off and fit into a school. Whereas when I was doing it, it was more of a guessing game of where I thought I might progress and how I thought I could possibly fit in. So.
Yeah, and for our viewers, if you want information about more information about universal tennis, just go to universaltennis.com. But it's good to understand there's a difference between a rating and a ranking. One of the cliches that we use, or that I'll use, is a ranking is usually something that you chase. A rating is something that you earn.
Right.
And so rankings in the college recruiting process, many coaches have trouble differentiating between this kid is ranked 20 in Southern Cal, this kid is ranked 140 in the ITF rankings, or ranked 12 in Israel. So because the rankings are something that you chase, it's usually based on per rounds,
getting in,
who went to this tournament to play, who went to that, who had the luck of the draw, kind of thing. So the rating is much more of a defining abilities. And as Lindsey pointed out, you can also look at the schools to see what levels of play that exist at that school, so you can find the school that's a better fit for you. If you're looking for if you want to be Rudy, you can find that school. Or if you want to be an elite player and play 1 or 2 and be one of the best in that school's history, you can find that school too. What's really neat now is with these ratings, with the universal tennis ratings, now they have that Power 6 rating, which is basically you combine the top 6 of your team, and that's what it comes out to be. So like for on the men's side, Virginia's which is number 1 in the country now, they're about an 88. So the top 4 or 5 teams, when you add up their top 6 players, it's 88. On the women's side, 68 is the number. So I think Vanderbilt won the national championship last year, and their team was about a 68, 67. And if you go down the rankings to the 50s, those teams are 60s, right about at 60. And it sounds kind of close, but a 60 to a 68, it's a big jump. So that means a 60 to a 66, that means that every number, for the most part, one level differential, which is usually scores like 6'3", 6'2", unless someone is stepping up,
climbing.
So if you had to do it again, I mean, do you regret the Notre Dame decision, or do you go, God, I wish I'd have went to?
Darryl, you've known me long enough. No, Notre Dame, best thing I ever did. Go back tomorrow. Best 4 years. Love to coach. And I think coaching becomes, and I think that's part of what we do with the consulting company as well, is looking at, and I didn't know it, again, more things I didn't know when I was going through this process, but how much the coach becomes a part of the choice in the school. And I went in with, top 10 schools that after you met the coach, wildly shuffled around, because it does end up becoming someone that's a mentor, a father figure. You're spending 5 and 6 days a week with this person. And I think I had a great experience with Jay, but you really have to find that blend with the team and the coach. And that's something we guide our players through as well, is making sure as you're finding the right fit, it's not just 100% academics and athlete. You also have to look at the team and the fit around the coach. So there's more to it than just that. But Notre Dame was perfect for me.
And both you and I, we had an experience coaching at the NCAA Division III level, and it was kind of impressive. I think we both. I'd coached at Division III level back in the early '80s, but the way that it is now, how competitive it is. We were traveling in charter buses, playing at a first-class facility. So, how about you? What was your feedback on the Division III? And I remember you took some of our clients to visit Division III schools, and you were impressed with everything from the weight room and the quality of coaching.
I found it unbelievable, and I think coming from California, where there isn't a ton of Division III play, and then going to Notre Dame and only competing at the Division I level. I just didn't have a concept of, I knew it was out there. I knew there was Division III sports, but I didn't have a concept of the competitiveness and the competition that goes into playing at a Division III level. And yes, I've seen their weight rooms, and some of them are, just as impressive as what we had at Notre Dame. So you look at some of their facilities and the money that's going into that. And I think just because of ignorance, not for any other reason, that I didn't know the academic draw that's also at schools like this. So you can get the same experience I had as far as Notre Dame being a strong academic school and strong athletic school. You can get that same experience at a Division III school. And obviously the scholarship play is a little different, but and the money is different, but that competitiveness, that chance to be an All-American, that chance to win a national championship, along with getting that top tier education. You look at some of the schools around here at the Division III level, the education is just as good. Just a lot of them are smaller and things like that. So it's a different opportunity to achieve the same thing. And I didn't even know it existed, but it was shocking and highly impressive to me.
Now, when we start to work with clients and we start to do consulting to help kids find the school that's the best fit, the first phase that we start off with is an evaluation phase of basically obtaining information from our potential clients, and that takes a lot of time, because originally you kind of start off and sometimes they don't know. It could be everything from, hey, I like that school because of the branding perception, whether it be God, they play with Nike. Sometimes the professor's name doesn't come up with, but I know some of the variables that we sort of hit on is, what do you want your athletic experience to be like? Academic experience, do you want to be taught on a smaller ratio? Athletic experience, do you want to have an opportunity for your team or program to compete for a conference championship? Or do you want to be on a partially funded program that may not get as much of the attention within the athletic department? What are some other variables, I think, that come to your mind?
Well, I think going back a little, we also try to get a better understanding of the player's level and experience, and try to guide through that process. I think some people are still, even with competitive tennis players, unfamiliar with UTR and where they might fit into that. And, oh, well, I'm a really good player. What does that mean? So trying to get to the bottom of where the level actually is, what the goals are, what they're doing to improve those goals. So having a better understanding of where they're going with their tennis ability, I think is a primary place where we try to start. If you talk to my parents about me, they would say I was the best tennis player that ever lived. So just trying to get a realistic understanding of where the player is and where they're going, and then how that fits in to their choices for schools and what they're looking for. And what, we had a player that we worked with here that, would say, well, my only priority is academics, and it has to be this, and it has to be this. And then, 2 months later, it was like, well, maybe I really want the tennis to be a bigger part. And then the next month it would change. So trying to really drill down to what the player is looking for. And with a teenager, with anyone for that matter, it can be hard to really. So that's what we work on is getting to know exactly what they're looking for, because that's primary.
And I like that experience that we actually do have people, they change because as you gather more information,
right.
You should, as you gather more information, then you kind of, well, maybe I do want that,
right.
Or because, for a team to win a conference championship, I don't want to leave that on the table necessarily. Right. And then we also, I think you and I have discussed this plenty about what do you mean when you say I want to go to a good academic school? What does that mean?
Right.
I kind of associate it more, if I'm not gathering information from the client, with what's the selectivity of the school. Does it have we know the Harvards of the world, the Princetons, the John Hopkins.
Right.
Those are single digits. I mean, they have a 7, 8, 9% acceptance rate.
Right.
I kind of associate that with good academics, but some people mean good academics. It just means that they want a good network to help them get a job.
Wildly different. And my husband and I argue about this all the time because he went to Miami for undergrad, and I always claim that Notre Dame is better than Miami. Mm-hmm. And then we get into the USC where he went for dental school. So yes, and he goes, well, how are you determining that Notre Dame's better? And I said, U.S. World News and rankings. And he goes, well, so there's 15 different ways to determine. So it's exactly what you're saying. What you say you want a good academic school, what does that mean to you? Because that can mean very different things to very different people. So I think and it could be that one school, if you want to be an engineer, well, then you could look at engineering, and that's where he argues Miami, where he went to undergrad, has one of the only and better biomedical engineering programs in the country. So looking at something like that and saying, well, I chased that dream. I didn't chase Stanford. I chased a biomedical engineering degree. So looking deeper into that really helps get an understanding of what people mean when they say the best academic school.
Right. And going back, I want to retouch on that athletic experience is usually we're pretty good with our projections when we're associating a particular client with a school that they would be projected, or you projected to be an elite player. Right. We use terms like elite, aspirant, participant, project, Rudy.
Right.
Some players they're very athletic and they're going to develop in college.
Right.
So they're more projects, and usually these are. Sometimes there's some guys who have some big serves, and now they mature and the serves getting in a little bit more, or there's some. Maybe some females that have some great pace on the groundies, but they get a little bit more consistent.
A level 8 that wants to play at a school that only has level 12s, but started late and is just now getting into the tennis scene hardcore. And really, the 8 was a 6 3 months ago. Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of different ways to look at it and a lot of different things.
But I like that we're very realistic about it, that we're explaining. The coach is always trying to recruit over you,
right?
For the most part. So don't expect, we're not guaranteeing or projecting you to be in there. You'll have an opportunity if you kind of stay with it.
And and I've told parents this as well, but there's coaches all over the place that have different priorities, and sometimes whatever it is you have to bring, if you do have that particular serve that they know they need, or a doubles player that they've seen you play and they know they need that, there are exceptions to every rule. So it can't just be, well, I'm a 9 and this school only has 12s and above, I have no shot. There's different coaches that look for different things, and there's exceptions to every rule. So nothing's black and white with this process, and it's really a matter of figuring out what you want, and then if that's possible, in attaining that based on the coach and the program and the needs.
One of the other variables that comes up that we started to use here in the last year or so is it sounds a little weird to ask the question, but as weird it is to ask the question, we actually get fast answers on this. Do you want to go to a school that has football?
I think it's important.
Right. No, but do you want to go to a school that has football? And what's funny is that our clients, sometimes it's a quick answer usually, and because they know what we're talking about, is yes. Because football, that sport, it adds a different dynamic to the athletic department.
100%.
And but in some cases, it also adds an element, depending on where the school is in its mid-major or so forth. It is sometimes it makes tennis a less of a priority, or some other sports a less of a priority. So sometimes it kind of scares you away because you don't necessarily get the attention or the service, whether it be from trainers or sports information people and so forth. But that's a very big question. And I know our clients, we've had some that say, yeah, I want to go to the football school.
Well, and quite frankly, it's not something people get asked a lot. And I think it's important. And again, taking it way back old school, when I was looking, no one asked me that. And I didn't really realize it was important, even though I'm telling the story of going to Michigan my freshman year in high school and seeing Notre Dame play Michigan in the rain. That experience was probably what drove me to want Notre Dame. And yet I still looked, and if you look at my top 5 schools, not all of them had huge football programs. So I wish that I had at that time someone to break out these questions for me. Yeah. So I had a better framework, and I happened to have the Notre Dame dream since I was a young kid. So that all happened to work out, but I could have gone really wrong because I didn't have a framework, and my schools were all over the map, and I didn't really know. I looked at Vanderbilt, which was a great tennis school at the time. Their football, I mean, yes, they have football, but it's not any kind of program with any kind of, fame, or it's not, so there's different things you can look at, and I didn't know. So I think adding that framework is really helpful to clients to kind of outline exactly what they're looking for.
Some of the other factors that we come up with that come about in our discussion with clients is geographical locations, warm weather, cold weather, big school, small school, even flights. I mean, now are they going to go to a place where it's one flight to get home, or do you have to have connecting flights for the longer ones? Any other variables that pop to mind that of course we do have some that like they choose between Nike schools and Under Armour schools and so forth, and they use that as a factor. Some have that as a factor.
I know you place the importance on the sponsor on success of certain athletic teams, but we won't go there.
Yeah, some do. So what are the kind of factors? I think that's it in a nutshell, though, right?
I mean, those are the major ones. I think also the commitment to tennis, understanding what level of commitment they want to the tennis program. Is important. Everybody, I think most people would say they want their child or the student would say they want to succeed academically. But what does that mean as far as commitment to the tennis program and how they want that to fit in? I think some tennis programs are a larger commitment as far as time management goes than others. So where they want that to fit in is tennis for fun, and we want it to be a part of our experience. Or is this something we're doing as a full-time job in addition to the academics?
Yeah. Because some schools you're going to play
a lot more than others.
You're going to play 8 or 9 months and be under a schedule for 8 or 9 months, and some it's going to be some of the Division III schools. Actually, Division III rule is 19 weeks. So do you want 19 weeks or do you want 9 months? Or
right.
8 months.
And then even in the spring, there's varied levels of match play. Are you playing 3 matches a week and you're playing a midweek match on Wednesday, or are you playing, the scheduling can be different. So it's kind of what commitment, and is there weight training? Are you doing, physical training of any kind in addition? So I think all that becomes important as far as how committed you are to it and where you want it to fit into your balance.
Well, let's progress to the next phase. That was the evaluation phase where we gather information. But the next phase, and I think you're excellent in this phase, the prioritization phase. I mean, I've seen you work with our clients prioritizing, hey, is it football? Is it tennis? Is it that far away from home? So put them in order where you can make a decision. Can you expand a little bit more on that prioritization phase?
And I think this goes back to what we talked about with kids not knowing. And it is hard to know. I mean, we're asking 17-year-olds to say, tell us exactly what you want for the next 4 years of your life. That's hard. You get to college and you're supposed to say what major you want to be for the next 50 years of your life. So it's a hard thing to do, and drilling down by talking about that. And sometimes this answer is different when you speak to the client versus when you speak to the parents who are also clients. So it's finding that balance of exactly what they're needing, and just asking the right questions. And sometimes even after talking to them for a month, that can change.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I wanted football, and then they talk to their parents, they talk to their friends, or they saw something on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they saw a football game on TV and they saw all the students,
Yeah.
and that maybe I do want football. That looks really fun. So I think just building the time with the client, but just asking the right questions and making sure we can get to a place on what they want to do in the future. If this is a med school, 100% med school person that needs, so we've got to look at that. Some people have a very clear path and some people don't. And so it's trying to meet those needs for even the clients that don't have a very clear path of what they want.
Yeah, I found when you've worked with the prioritization phase with the clients is you do it in a very tactful way, a very smooth way, in a sense, but it's some soul searching.
You have to.
Yeah, what is it you want? And then I know we play devil's advocate. When they say, hey, I definitely want, to go to this school that I want to compete for conference championships and qualifying for the NCAAs.
Right.
Or would you rather play at the Division III level, have a chance to be an All-American? Those are tough questions, and I think by them going through this phase, it just makes them a more experienced person with other things too, because we do see in the recruiting process where the coach identifies the player, and the player just becomes majorly attractive to this college or school because the coach showed interest. And so as opposed to our clients, what we focus on is, hey, we want our clients to pick their prom date.
Right.
And since they're picking their prom date, they might as well pick the college that they want to go to also.
100%. I think, this is a maturing process, just even working with us and having to speak to adults in this way, and can help prepare for speaking to coaches in the same way, in an adult conversation, with some of these kids aren't as used to having, but it also puts some accountability on them. I've talked to clients that kind of make statements about what they want in the form of a question. Well, I want to go to a good academic school. And I said, is that a statement or a question? Yeah. So I can't answer these questions for you. So there is some of us putting that back on the player.
Yeah.
Look, you need to think about this and talk to your parents and talk to your friends, and maybe do, the Mr. Dr. Google that's out there, do a little research, and you've got to have the player has to have some accountability in this, and also be able to firmly say some of the things they want. Because I can't and you can't make a decision for the player that they want what experience they want. So they do, and we put the questions out there, and they need to take some time to think about them to be able to really decide, because that's not something we can choose for them. So I think putting some of that back on the player to really think about what they want, which they may not have before, is important.
And then moving forward to the next phase, once we've evaluated, we've been through the evaluation phase. Now we prioritize those lists. Then we actually get into the list phase, where usually it's sometimes our clients will give us a list of schools because they went through those first two on their own,
right?
Or the parents went to Ivy League schools and their brothers and sisters went to Ivy League schools. So maybe you're going to an Ivy League school.
Right.
But when we get to the list phase, it is now putting down about 8 to 12 schools that meet the criteria of their evaluation phase and also of their prioritization phase.
Right.
So the list phase sometimes is kind of eye-opening, because I know when we've done it, we ended up with schools, as opposed to starting with the school, now you end up with some on the list that you didn't think of.
That's just my point.
Yeah.
I think that people end up surprised at things we might throw on. And there needs to be a diversity in the list. I think always, no matter if you're very clear on there's 3 things I want, you can't have 3. I mean, you can have 3 schools if your tennis is good enough and you're going to meet all these. But to have this list of 8 or 12 and maybe have a few schools on there that are a surprise to you, that maybe open up your thought about what maybe you really want and what could fulfill your needs.
Right.
So I think those lists are great as far as making people really think about the diversity of opportunities out there. And sometimes we can come up with stuff that aren't just, the standard opportunities that people are aware of.
Right. And from, I think, our experience, we've actually had it happen both ways. And what I mean by both ways is some people, they think when you put this list phase together, hey, there's a school that I wasn't thinking about, that I didn't even know about,
right?
On there. But it's also, we've had that experience the opposite. For example, we've had a client that one who really was a level 5, level 6 player, and she didn't think that she could be on a Division I team.
Right.
And she wanted that opportunity, and we actually found a Division I team that met. They were partially funded. They had a football program. The athletic director wants a lot of girls on the team, and she just wanted to be a member on the team. Or some of these Power 5 colleges that keep on the men's side, they keep larger rosters, and they're looking for hungry, tenacious, competitive players, that because they want a team of 12, and they might recruit 4 studs using a larger amount of scholarships.
Right.
But and Notre Dame's like that. They would spread out that last little bit of scholarship among like 8 guys. I think there's 8 guys on a book scholarship competing, and someone ends up being captain and playing number 3 doubles.
Yeah.
But my point being is, when we do the list, sometimes we actually have someone in there, you go, and the client goes, you think I can make that team?
Right.
Because we know these variables, these dynamics, whether it be the coach or the coach's approach to to competitive play.
Well, and you use that example of something we provide. I think we have a client that we worked with that just wanted to play on a Division I team and wanted to be in the best program they could be. And their UTR and their level was a little lower than they ever thought. So, you look at this person's a level 9, and everybody this guy's recruiting is at a level 11 and above. And she's going, I got no shot. And we're saying, there's other opportunities. Money wasn't an issue for her. So it's looking at a recruited walk-on situation where you're going to be a walk-on, and that's okay with you because you don't need the scholarship. But it's a recruited situation where the coach has seen you play, and it's helping a client get the opportunity to play in front of that coach and be seen, because we know the player is special. They have drive, good communication skills, all the things that this coach would be looking for in a player, but they're slightly too low for a scholarship. Get them in front of the coach, get the opportunity for them to make an impression, and look at that recruited walk-on situation where the coach is saying, I can't give you a scholarship today, but come play on my team and we'll see where that leads.
Right.
And I think that's a big opportunity, which again, I didn't know about at the time, but one of my teammates came to Notre Dame, really wanted to go, paid her way, walked on the team in a recruited walk-on situation, and by junior year got a scholarship. So she paid for her second 2 years. So there's opportunities out there that a lot of people don't know exist, and it's helping facilitate those opportunities that we can get them in front of coaches to be seen where they might not normally have.
Yeah, and also in the list phase, when we're doing the list phase, just like coaches will do to recruit, sometimes some recruits, their stock's going up, some are even, some are stocks going down. Right. On our list phase, we factor into it. There's programs that are on the rise. Or I know of a couple of programs they were partially funded now on the women's side. Now they're going to 8 full scholarships of building new facilities and so forth. And then you have some programs that maybe they got like a coach has been there just a little too long.
Reverse is true as well.
And they're trending down.
It might be your opportunity to sneak in the back door to a school you didn't think you could.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess the word's trending. Some are trending up.
Trending up, trending down.
That's the trend, right?
Yeah,
trending.
The internet, Twitter, people are trending. I don't know.
So on the list phase, sometimes we put schools that we factor in that hey, this one's trending up and this one's just kind of trending nowhere. And so
I've talked to clients about that before, and they get surprised.
Well, the next phase after we develop this list is now we begin the marketing process, which is the communication phase. Right. And so we're actually recruiting the college, and that's what we want our clients to do, as opposed to the college recruiting our clients. So we're trying to engage and make it happen, if you will.
Make it happen, yes.
That's kind of my favorite phase, the communication phase, because
of course it is.
wow, it's a lot of persistence sometimes to get coaches' attention. Is first thing you got to realize, if a coach isn't staying up in their correspondence work, text, email, phone calling. So if we're calling them, clients call them, excuse me, if they're doing that, you can't take it personally that you're getting ignored.
Right. Because you think about the volume of calls they're getting.
Yeah, they just can't stay with it sometimes. And not every one of these coaches went to a Dale Carnegie time management, Franklin Covey sort of system. So anyway, so we grind that. Now, can you expand on, nowadays we got all this kind of stuff to communicate with. What do you think your best form of communication is? Phone calling the coach, in front of the coach, texting, emailing? I
think in person is always obviously great. People make good impressions in person. You have full attention. I think we all know texting can get lost. There's tone issues. People don't know inflections in your voice. So I think text can always be a problem, but it's a good form of communication if that's the best you can do. I think a phone call, if you can get a hold of someone live. I was in sales for many years. So I think, calling and not leaving a message and giving yourself the opportunity to call back and try to catch the coach live is always a good thing to do. Having a live conversation with a human being is always better than, a voicemail back and forth. And if you leave a voicemail and they have 50 voicemails, do you think she's going to listen or he's going to listen to yours and call you back? You get lost in shuffles that way. So, you call a couple times and don't leave a voicemail and try to connect live.
I like that you just said. Sometimes, and this isn't all, there's some instinctiveness that goes with this, and certainly there's some guidance from us.
Right.
But I like calling without leaving a voicemail.
Right.
Because if you do leave a voicemail, then that kind of takes away your right to calling back.
Yeah, the unreturned calling with unreturned calls. I would joke with my friends about it. If I called my girlfriend the other day and I called her twice before she called me back once.
Yeah.
And I said, I know, I haven't gotten the return phone call and I've called twice. It's kind of protocol with phones. I don't know who established, they established this, but if you called once and left a message, then it's their turn and you're kind of waiting and you're not in a power position anymore. So they don't know your number. They don't have, caller ID is not going to do them any good. So if you can't get a hold of them, try a couple of times, because if you call and leave a message, I had a client say, well, I left 2 messages. Yeah, well, maybe they didn't ever hear them. You don't know if they've even listened to those. Delete. So don't leave a message and keep calling and try to, again, these are tennis coaches. So you kind of have an idea of when they might be sitting at a desk. Most college tennis coaches, if they are in their office, it's more than likely going to be in the morning time. Before afternoon is always when practice is usually. So, catching a coach from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock sitting at a desk is not as likely. So knowing these things and making your best stab at trying to get a hold of someone live is a good bet.
And when we start to participate in this communication phase with the client, every situation is different. So one of the things I think that we are consistent about is when the student athlete is visiting the college, we try to get the kid in there without the parents. And also we try to get the recruit to, when we're doing the phone calling, to mentor them, to coach them up. Because quite frankly, the coach doesn't, when mama starts talking about it with your game and how good it is, I know being a former college coach, I just asked mama, hey, how good's your forehand? Because, if you're going to talk, I just need to know how good your forehand is, because I'm not recruiting you. I'm recruiting this kid.
Well, and you can honestly, most coaches know that what a parent is saying is probably 20% true. So, because every parent really believes in their child. So I'm kidding on the 20%, but they want to hear, and it's a maturity thing. So a coach wants to hear that the player is capable of asking the right questions. I think the questions are huge. We've talked about this before. And I'm sure we can go into that in greater detail, but asking the right questions, showing the right interest, vice just, sitting there meekly in a chair or not being able to pick up the phone and call. And I can distinctly remember getting so nervous to have phone calls with coaches when I was in high school. It's a big step. Now with the technology age, a lot of these kids are used to just texting all conversations. I didn't have that, so I was a little better on the phone, but nowadays especially, kids aren't used to talking on the phone, and it's a lot of pressure to talk to an adult, ask for what you want. ask the questions you need to know, and put yourself out there. And I think working with them to get them the confidence to do that is what's vital. And I think coaches are impressed by it and don't see it very much these days. So to make yourself stand out, you can't send the text or the email every time, because you just blend into the crowd, because that's all anybody does anymore.
Yeah. In that communication phase, I mean, we had a client that recently visited. She's a rock star. I mean, she has it. And she visited an Ivy League school, and pretty much the coach was so impressed with it, says, hey, I'm going to, if you can hold that racket in your left or right hand, I'm going to endorse your application.
Right.
I mean, this girl has such good people skills. Right. And we do try to mentor that up, right. Whether it be carrying a hard copy resume when you go to visit, when to phone call, how to phone call, shaking hands. Because I mean, you definitely don't go meet the coach and you do knuckles. I mean, that's even if you're germophobia. I mean, in the big boy and girl world, when you're trying to get a job and everything, those kinds of skill sets are very important.
And there's gaps there these days. So I think really making yourself stand out from the 400 other people that are trying to go to that school is what's most important. And so I think giving you a leg up on ways you can stand out and be different, and like the girl you're referring to, is just impressive communication skills, which again, with technology and texting and Twitter, people aren't as used to having man-to-man, eye-to-eye conversations with people and shaking hands and looking people in the eye. So I think just going back old school to that can really make a player stand out from any other one.
Right. Yeah, because in that communication phase, we're just trying to get people's attention.
Right.
But we have qualified the player usually in that situation. You know, I remember having a discussion with one coach. He was asking me about this particular guy, and he says, hey, so what's the deal with the parents? And I said, look, you know, mom's a nightmare. She's going to call you like 3 times a week. He says, well, why do I want this kid? And I said, well, this kid's going to play number 1 for you, and over his 4 years, she's going to be Conference Player of the Year. I haven't projected to be Conference Player of the Year once or twice. And, you know, you're not one of those big 5 schools. So
you need this guy.
You need this
Mama
guy.
And all.
So just mom's going to call 3 times a week, you know, and that is something that we do. We're very open and honest and forthcoming with this, and that's what makes it a little bit unique. We're not sending out some email. Johnny's good on the team because he's a good player. He works hard.
Hard worker. Yeah, there it is. It always goes back to that. I'm a hard worker.
Yeah, by the way, hard worker is usually one sign that you don't have talent.
There's no backhand.
But
you're a hard worker.
I'm a hard worker. You know, Federer is a hard worker, but you would like to say that you're effortless, maybe, but something different. And the other one that I despise, which is I really enjoy playing doubles, which to me means you have no confidence in singles. So in that communication phase, just to recap that, we're in the qualifying mode. We're not in the dictating mode there. So we're not going, hey, this kid's a hard worker, really loves doubles and so forth. We're actually asking the coach, what is it you look for in a player? Coach says, look, I'm looking for someone that's a level 11 or 12 UTR player on the male side. Well, what else are you looking for? Well, I really like big serving guys that can get free points because our courts are very fast. Well, what else? What else are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for independent thinking, self-motivated players. Now, we can qualify if we have that person that's the best fit.
Right.
So often it's no different than asking someone to the prom or asking someone for a job or asking someone to partner with you in business. You're qualifying the situation, asking them what they're looking for, and seeing if you are the right fit.
Right. And a funny story to add on to that, my girlfriend who ended up playing at Notre Dame with me, not the most athletic girl you've ever had, but hand-eye was great and was a great tennis player and just slugged the heck out of the ball and was really good at it and made a lot of balls. And she was better than I was. She took a scholarship right before me. Never had mentioned Notre Dame all growing up, by the way, and then just slid in there and took a scholarship before me. But that's neither here nor there. So we go to those booths at the national tournaments that I referred to earlier. And she walked up to the Duke booth. And again, this is an example of a coach knowing exactly what he needed and wanted for that coming year, which sometimes they have a very specific, and she walked up, shook his hand, and said, I need a girl with fast hands and fast feet that can play doubles.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the slowest girl you've ever met, never plays doubles, couldn't volley to save her life, but just slugs from the baseline really well and got away with it because she was such an excellent slugger. So she got up and said, thank you, it was a pleasure to meet you, and walked away. She knew she wasn't the right fit for Duke at that time on that team.
Sure.
And she said, thank you to me, it was wonderful to meet you. And she walked away, and that was the end of the conversation. So sometimes a coach knows exactly what you need, and you may or may not be that fit. If you are that exact person, then that's a great opportunity to fit in there. And sometimes it just might not be the right fit on that year. So, there's knowing the coach and knowing the needs and asking the right questions goes back to that, is how we can figure out where you're going to fit in best.
Now, as we go through this communication phase, like last week, I talked to a lot of Ivy League coaches on the female side, and it was neat to hear what they're all looking for. It wasn't just the level of play; it was, can you handle the academics and the competitive balances at this school? Because, and we're looking for people that have good leadership and team dynamics. They make my team better. And that was common among the five that I talked to last week. They were looking for some intangibles, and they're under a lot of demands as far as academically.
Having that insider info too is important. And I think it goes back to my high school play, and I was feisty. I probably yelled a little too much, hit my racket a little too much. And my private coach said to me, he's like, I can name a couple of coaches I know, and the Notre Dame coach was included in that because he knew him personally, my private coach. And he said, he's not going to be having this. So if you can't pull it together and cut this out and clean it up, you're not going to be able to get where you need to be. So I think having that, you're looking for someone with leadership and academic. My private coach knew that the coach at Notre Dame wasn't going to put up with someone who's yelling and hitting their racket, and that if I didn't clean it up, I was going to be out. So having that kind of information and being able to work through that is important. And I think that's where we can benefit. Mm-hmm.
Now, Lindsey, the final phase of that we deal with is the big one. The big one. You got the LeBron James. You got to make the decision.
The LeBron James.
What college are you going to?
I'm going to take my talents to blank.
You got to decide where you're going to take your talents. And if you do the process very well with us, that last phase is a little bit difficult because you become attracted to a couple of schools, maybe two or three, and you don't want to let that coach down and make that phone call that you're not coming. But also, we got a couple on the list, maybe that is that we're waiting to hear back from them. Whether it be a scholarship offer, whether it be an endorsement to admissions. And if we did it well, we may have 3 or 4 that are slam dunks, 2 that are a little bit of reach that we're still knocking at the door waiting to hear, and 2 that have extended some gracious opportunities to our client. And we help them with that decision phase. But we also did you have to make any of those phone calls to let those other coaches down?
I was just going to say,
Notre Dame? With
the decision phase, it can either be really simple or really complex, and there's a lot of in between, depending. Everybody's jockeying for spots, and coaches are waiting to see if other girls accept and not, and so there's a lot of complication. Notre Dame was my dream, and I hadn't heard from them, and the Texas A&M coach had flown to San Diego and sat on my couch with my family and said, we want Lindsey, and they're the nicest men to assistant and a coach. And they were sitting on my couch in my family room talking with my family, and were the nicest people. And I loved the school, but it wasn't Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And that night, it's 9:00, and I can remember my parents sitting on the end of my bed. I'm getting ready to go to bed, and they're like, Lindsey, you're going to have a great experience anywhere. I think you have to let the Notre Dame thing go. Mm-hmm. If A&M was here, you loved it. You got to tell them yes. Time's kind of running out, and pointing at their watch. And 1 hour later, at the very late time of 10:00, which is pretty late for a college coach to be calling, Jay was at All-Americans in California up at UCLA and called me at 10:00 at night, and my parents come in. They're like, it's Jay, it's Notre Dame. And I was like, okay. And so we get on the phone, and 20 minutes into him telling me how the team is doing and me thinking, I don't care at all how this is. What are you calling me for? He offered me the scholarship, and I had to I had to call A&M the next day and tell them no, and I was planning on telling them yes that very day. So it was a wild turn of events at the very last minute, but it's hard to be mature enough to make that phone call and tell them you're not coming.
Right.
I'm sure they knew because they knew I loved Notre Dame, but still, it was a maturing process doing that as well.
Sure.
So.
Well, we want with all of our clients, we want it to work out as well as it worked out for you.
Me too.
And I want to thank you for being on the Sports Philosophy Show today, our first YouTube live edition.
Yes.
And so the Sports Philosophy Show is every Wednesdays, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank our sponsors, Davenport and Company, the Norfolk office. We want to thank K&D Rounds, Cape Henry Racket Club, and Universal Pest. So we look forward to seeing everyone next week on the Sports Philosophy Show. Thank you very much.